G'day, people. Here we are. It's Brad Houston on Changemakers, episode 8. And today we are chatting to Joe Taranto from Good for the Hood. Really, really exciting. I guess it's pretty clear to see now after being 8 episodes in that I get excited every time I come across people who are doing interesting and exciting things in the world, making place a better place to be. And there's a lot that really, I guess, resonates with what these guys are about with my own quest. You know, these a group of people who have successfully made an impact in a number of ways, and they're passionate about finding other people who are also making impact and uniting those people together and inspiring them to go out and make a change in their respective neighbourhoods, the hood. So let's get Jo on board here and she can tell us all about what they've been doing. Hi.
Hi, Brad. How are you?
I'm good. How are you going?
Good. Welcome to my hood.
Yeah, indeed. Now, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did. It's not quite Tarantino, but yes, Taranto. That's
Yeah,
right.
you could probably see where I was about to go with that because it's probably where everybody goes. But it's so predictable, people. Honestly, yeah,
It would be a
have.
much fuller name.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's it's funny. Like Tarantino's such an interesting character, and because if you took away all of his accolades and his success as a director, he's quite a quirky guy, you know what I mean? But he's super cool to the average person because his movies are exciting, and I think, you know, Pulp Fiction was just a really cool movie. So he's just kind of been able to navigate his way from kind of quirky film nerd to global megastar.
I think nerd is probably the only thing that we have in common. I like to call myself an earth nerd, so that's as close as I get to the Tarantino. Yeah. Thanks
Earth
for having
nerd.
me.
Yeah. So, please, tell everybody a bit about, I guess, you know, who you are and what you're up to currently, and then we'll go into the story in more detail. But let's, I guess, paint a little context to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, my name's Jo Taranto. I am the co-founder of Good for the Hood, and Good for the Hood is a social enterprise. So we operate for a social and environmental purpose. And our purpose is really about empowering people just like myself and my co-founder, Karina, to take action for the community and for the environment. So we like giving ordinary people the tools and skills to, I guess, navigate change for their hood or their neighborhood or their local community, and give them ways to do that effectively that has real impact. So that's what we're about. And yeah, for us, it started in our own hood because that's where a lot of stuff does start, especially people of my age group.
Yeah. So please go into that. I've read it myself online, but it'd be great if you could share the story of how, like, what the thing was that sort of kicked it off.
Yeah, so Karina and I are both, so we're neighbours. We live on a street in North Ryde, and we were kind of brought together, as a lot of neighbours are, through just seeing each other, you know, out and about, picking up the mail. And we also had kids of a similar age who, at that stage, were just starting school together. So we got to know each other also because of our combined interest in the bush reserve behind our house. So we'd never really done anything like that before, but both of us had been involved in growing up in country communities, so pretty close-knit, environments, and we both living in the middle of Sydney. And so that little bush reserve that joined our houses together at the back became a bit of a sanctuary for both of us to go. And we got involved in the local council and started going down there sort of alone at first, and then bringing our families down and doing some, I guess they call bush regeneration, which is generally something that 80-year-olds do, but for some reason we got involved a lot earlier. So we started there, and for me, it kind of ignited this whole passion that I kind of knew was there, but also had never really tapped into. So I guess I'm an accidental environmentalist. I'm a little bit different in many ways, but we both felt this real passion for doing something. So what kicked it off for us was the day that a couple of our kids were talking about the beautiful park behind our house, which they called Treasureland. And they said, Mum, we found a jellyfish. And we're like, tell us about this jellyfish, because we didn't know we had a saltwater, area behind us. But they found the plastic lining of a coffee cup. And that was kind of the day that we're like, wow, we've got a few issues in our hood. And so we embarked on a little bit of a journey, well, quite a big journey really, tackling litter in the bush reserve behind our house. And it kind of just steamrolled from there. We've been now operating for coming into our third year. We've worked with ABC's series of War on Waste, and then now recently on Fight for Planet A. And the thing we've realised is that there's little, average Joes and Karinas across every community around Australia, and they all need a little bit of a helping hand to get started.
Yeah, that's awesome. There are a lot of things that I don't particularly love about, I guess, the modern era that we live in and this hyper-connected sort of reality. But I do love the ability for, I guess, like-minded people to be able to find each other via the internet, and for people to get inspiration. I mean, really, that's a large part of why I'm doing this series, is because I personally, have my own mission to try and make an impact in the world, and I'm excited about finding other people who also want to make an impact, and hopefully, in my own little way, through the sharing of these stories, inspiring other people and getting people to think about ideas and ways that we can all do something. So now tell me, because there was something that stuck out, being a country boy originally myself, whereabouts in the country did you grow up?
So I grew up in Tenterfield in northern New South Wales. So in the Tablelands, top of the Great Dividing Range, and I grew up in a property there that had been with my family for, I think, 5 or 6 generations.
Nice.
And it's a beef cattle farm, which I'm now, one of those vegetarians and kind of obnoxious, environmentalists. But I think what it did really ignite in me from a very young age is 2 things. One is a connection with country, which I've always had that really deep shoes. I get my hands dirty, find out about things. Always been incredibly inquisitive. And the other thing is, when you grow up in the country, you know who your neighbours are, you know who, your local council is, you know who, all your teachers at your school. You're very connected just because of, I used to call it that, it always felt like everyone knew your business, but there's a real comfort and connectedness that comes from that. And I love that feeling. And I think that's something that I will always try to replicate, because it's a very powerful thing when you're trying to mobilize people as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I know from my own personal journey, when I moved from the country to Sydney, even though I had relatives in Sydney and I'd been to Sydney plenty of times, but when I actually moved there and was living there, it was a real shock to my system, just like the fact that people literally wouldn't give you the time of day. Like, even if you were just an innocent person trying to say, hey, can someone do me the time, back before phones were in everybody's pockets, and you may not have had a watch and what have you, and people would just everyone's so scared that you're some sort of weirdo, you're going to sort of ask them for money or cigarettes or something. Yes.
It's a different way. And I love it. My parents always come to the city and go, don't worry, we're from the country. That's how they introduce themselves all the time, because they're just really chatty. And I think, there's something really nice about that.
Yeah. I can't remember what it was now, but I was just pondering the other day some of the times that Mum and my sisters and I would go to the city, and Dad, actually, he towards the tail end of things, when I was in high school, he ended up taking a role as the Director of Technology for the Department of Education. So he was a primary school principal. He'd done a lot of stuff in tech, and then he kind of got that role. And to begin with, he was living in this amazing place, really, that he only got to stay in for a while. It was until he, got the role permanently, but I think in the transition period between the person before him and him going to that role, they put him up in this like little apartment sort of split level thing that was on top of the Department of Education. So it was like on a secret floor in the lift. But yeah, we were there, and I just used to find it really strange that people wouldn't really talk to each other in the lift. And I thought, now I look back and I think, yeah, we would just be there, in our sloppy joes and.
Look, I think there's something very nice about people talking to each other and being connected, and I think COVID highlighted that more than anything, right? That, when we do have that increased distance and disconnection, it does feel strange. Well, it does for me anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So, how old were you when you left your property at Tenterfield?
So I left when I was like a lot of country kids who don't have much choice if they're going to work outside the community. I left when I finished school. So I left at the age of about 18, 19 and went to university in Brisbane. And my parents still live in the community in Tenterfield, and I'm actually going back next week. So, and it's always beautiful because people are like, oh, it's Jo, she's back, and what have you been up to? And yeah, there's a lot of catching up. So it's lovely.
Yeah, awesome. Now tell me, have you ever worked on TV?
I've done a little bit of work, yes. Increasingly, finding that we get, we've had some opportunities to do some work. Mostly what I do is for digital spaces now. We do, from Good for the Hood, similar to yourself, we end up connecting with a lot of people who've got a good story to tell. So increasingly we're about, connecting those people and amplifying their stories or sharing what they've learned on their journeys. So I do some podcast hosting, and I have done some, work to camera for a few things. So, and got a few things in the pipeline, hopefully too. So, look, that's certainly a space that's, and look, I think the best thing about exactly what you do is it's really nice to amplify voices about people doing great things for their community and for the planet. Sometimes I think, that should be amplified as much as, Married at First Sight or The Bachelor.
100%.
I know it may not be quite as exciting the way it's been done before, but I think there's a place for that. And I think that's why we've been quite passionate about working with the shows that we have worked with on, amplifying their messages, because they're really important. They hold a really important space.
Yeah. So tell me, so Good for the Hood, you are a social enterprise yourself, and you provide services to other social enterprises and the like. What's, I guess, do you have any sort of cutoff points, or how does that look?
So we actually do work with all sorts of businesses, government organisations, individuals, and sort of community groups. Mostly at the moment, we're working very closely with councils. We've been doing workshops with councils now for the last couple of years. We've got a number of workshops that we provide, from 1 hour through to full day kind of workshops, which have been, not impossible, but a bit different under the COVID experience. But we do a little bit of, coaching and support for people who are just starting out in that space. So a lot of, when someone's got an idea and they're like, hey, I want to do something, I just don't know what that looks like yet, or I don't know how to do it. We spend time with individuals or community groups doing that. And the other thing we end up doing quite a bit of is working with corporates as well. So, supporting either people within their organisation who are really trying to create change from bottom up, or, helping people align with maybe a sustainability strategy or a new way that they're adapting their business. So it's quite interesting how, maybe we didn't sort of start out thinking that that's where we were going to find ourselves. But what we find is that there's passionate people within every organisation, within every community, within every school, who want to do something or maybe make a change, and they deserve the tools and skills to do that well. Yeah.
So when you say it's not necessarily what you kind of thought, what did you think at the beginning? What was the picture?
We had this is is the interesting thing. We really did not intend on starting a business. That was not the intent of what we did. When we started, really our passion was to help the community be a little bit less wasteful and make it more beautiful. That was all our intent was. But what we found is that whilst we did have some successes in that space, I'm not saying our community's, there by any means, but, it felt like there had been some successes and some wins along the way. What we learned is that our impact was potentially much more powerful if we could take the things that we know about what a good community project, campaign, group looks like and how they behave, particularly in those formative sort of times when someone's inspired to taking action. What can you do that actually makes that impact more worthwhile versus, because often people burn out. And our attitude is if we can give people the skills and the approach to do that really well, then their impact and their longevity is perhaps a lot more powerful. So that's kind of where we ended up, and it got to a point where we were like, well, for us to be a sustainable and impactful organization, we have to have a business model as well. And that's where Good for the Hood came out.
Yeah. Now, hopefully you don't mind me just kind of prodding and prying into things, but I think it helps other people kind of navigate their own little kind of journey. So look, for people who don't know what a social enterprise is, if you haven't watched Changemakers before, I don't talk about it all the time, but it is something that I'm kind of looking to get. I mean, that's the model I've got for Flicks for Good. So it's a social enterprise attached to a PTY Ltd, because I'm not against money. I don't want to be filthy rich, but I also don't mind making some money if things really take flight. And more than anything, the main reason I wanted that model is so that I had more freedom if I wanted to do things like staff getaways or things like that, like where we might want to, I guess, do things that help with employee engagement and employer attractiveness branding, because I have a career in the background of HR and recruitment. But social enterprise essentially is a bit of a funny beast because it doesn't have an official legal status for some reason. And it's essentially, some people call it profit for purpose. It's kind of, you can attach one to a PTY Ltd or you can attach it to a not-for-profit. And the main, I guess must is that you put at least, or give at least half of the profit that you make to the causes that you say that you're associated with. That's, I guess, it, sort of loosely anyway. So what was the reason you chose that model?
Look, we chose it for a couple of reasons. One is that, we're a startup, and, a not-for-profit is by its nature, and as it should be, especially one that's got a charity status, is a little bit more involved in terms of the structure. It's not something that either of us had experience with doing before. We'd worked in not-for-profits, but to run one is a whole nother beast. I think after speaking to a lot of people, which is part of what we did in terms of our due diligence, most of them said if they'd had their time over, they wouldn't have started a not-for-profit. They would have started a for-purpose organisation, because it's much more agile and they were able to still have similar outcomes, but they weren't tied down with the same amount of, bureaucratic and, the paper, sort of red tape and structures and things. So, again, I wanted to work in a business, but I wanted it to have, a purpose that was, and my interest has never been about being a millionaire. It's been about trying to have impact, and but I think the structuring it so that it works for you and works for what you're trying to do is really important. So we did a lot of research, we did a lot of advice, and that was where we sat. I remember sitting with, we actually spoke to Ronnie Khan, who started Oz Harvest, one of the country's biggest charities when it comes to food waste, and she sort of said that she even felt that she would have been well served to have a different structure for Oz Harvest. And I think they've now got a for-purpose arm as well. And they're incredibly successful. They've changed, legislation. They've had huge impact across Australia. But so I think there's no right or wrong. I know people who've done, a whole bunch of different structures, but for us, this felt right. It gives us a capacity to, choose certain charities. So choose, certain other organisations that we'd like to support who have a similar mission or are tackling issues. So, we've been working with a couple of climate change organisations this year. We've worked with, waste sort of diversion charities in the past. But we also then obviously have a purpose in terms of our mission to create impact with what other people are learning to do as well. So, yeah, I think social enterprises, we give a shout out to social traders. They're a fantastic way of getting, a certification when you, in a world where there's not a lot of certification.
Yes.
B Corps are a great one as well. And also if you're looking to be looking at your climate impacts and your emissions, then Climate Active is another one that you can get. That's a federal government certification of carbon neutrality. So you can actually certify that you're, not giving out any emissions and contributing to the climate issue that we have. So yeah, whilst there's no sort of, rules around using social enterprise, there are lots of ways to verify that you are one of the good guys.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the thing, and that's something I suppose I just came across, particularly on the Sunshine Coast where I am here. Like when I went to see my accountants, and they're lovely, by the way, and they're doing a great job. But when I went to go see them, they didn't know what a social enterprise was, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I was talking to some other people, and I just started realizing, I really think there are a lot, it's not as well known as it should be. So one of the things that I've started talking to some of the people who are on the coast here, people like Ellie, who I had on the show last week, is maybe starting a bit of a meetup group here on the coast, both for existing social enterprises and B Corps and anybody who's interested in that. And then obviously we'd have to adhere to all of the COVID sort of stuff, but we're pretty fortunate up here. It's eased up a lot. So, we're not out of the woods, I guess, but it's definitely not as bad as it is in other places.
I think the other thing that's good about, Brad, is just that that a lot of corporates, if they have a social procurement policy, it's a really great way that they can enhance their impact too. So some organisations will, when they need to procure a service or some goods, they'll look at who's out there and who is a social enterprise or who has, and then they'll purchase from them first with the dollars that with them amplify the impact or potential, social or environmental benefits. So it's another way that we, a lot of organisations are looking at when as part of their, social corporate responsibility. So yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of become one of those things where some companies will even do some of these things just because they want to be seen to be doing, the right thing as opposed to really caring. But I kind of have a little bit of a philosophy where I'm, a bit like you. I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, like if it gets done, I mean, preferably people actually, give a shit. But if they don't and still makes an impact on the world for the better, then
outcome's the same, right?
Yeah. So let's fill in the blanks between leaving the country to I guess the stint in Brisbane, and then how you've ended up in Sydney. I always find people's story interesting, and I suppose there normally are some little threads in there as to, I guess, how that's all rolled up into being, doing what you are now.
Yeah, well, I actually I knew from that I wanted to do something that I felt really connected with. And when I spoke to people about careers and things, everyone always said, choose something that you're passionate about, which is, all very well, because often you don't know what that is. But I knew that my passion was people when I was at school, and I loved talking to people and I loved helping people. So I trained as an occupational therapist. I went to University of Queensland and studied there, and loved that degree and loved that whole vocation. And that, for anyone who doesn't know, occupational therapy is really about assisting people and giving them the tools and the skills to be able to maximize their independence or give them their ability to return or to keep doing things that are important to them. So I worked in mental health. I worked with people who had brain injuries and stroke rehab. I travelled to the UK and worked there for about a year with various hospitals and sort of the locum in the NHS and across the UK. And then I returned to Australia and moved to Melbourne, which is a part of the world I'd always wanted to live in. And decided that, I was quite passionate about helping people with vocation, so what they were doing for work. So I ended up working in workers' comp rehab. So people who had an injury at work, I was helping them get back to, the work they were doing before, or maybe retrain. And I guess after a while of working with that, you really realize quite quickly that there's a thread between people and work, and that they either do it for two reasons. One is that it sort of is something that they have to do, and that, it's a job and I need a job. Or one is that it's just something that they are so driven to do because it's something they're passionate about. And I got to a point where I started to feel like the career I had was the former, and that I was just turning up because it was a job. I was starting to have a young family at that point, and I was working in aged care by that stage, working with people who'd had injuries at work. And aged care is quite notorious for having, quite a lot of high-risk manual handling issues.
Yeah.
So after I had kids, I decided that was the time that I really need to reassess where my passions lay. And I had my first son, and then subsequently had quite a few miscarriages. So I went through a really tough time for a period there. And I think that was the moment that sort of went, okay, you have to really look at what your life is, because it's fleeting and who knows what the future might hold. And, you've got these beautiful kids who've been total gift now. You've got a family, and how are you going to make this life count, because it's short?
Yeah.
And that's when I thought, well, the thing that I'm missing and that I'm passionate about is that stuff that I used to have back on the farm, which is the dirt and the country that I feel part of, and my community. So that's where Karina and I got to. So there's not a huge, to be honest, it might sound like I've had a few different careers, but to be honest, there's been a lot of parallels. And the thing that I loved doing when I was working as an occupational therapist was helping people create change. So whether that was their job, their life, their lifestyle, adapting to something that's happened, it's a similar thing. There's ways and means of doing it that's effective. And I really love helping people do that.
Yeah, that's nice. I thought about doing occupational therapy, or I thought that if I was going to go and study something, I thought that it would be quite interesting. And definitely not out of my choosing, but I ended up spending quite a bit of time with some occupational therapists after breaking my back about 8 years ago. So there was quite a long.
Do it,
yeah. There was a long path, there of recovering, and we're just so lucky here in Australia, really, that it's compared to other places and even America. I couldn't really have asked for much more, bar probably a few nurses that I didn't care for, who I don't think did a great job of looking after me. But, on the whole, it's paid for. I had, expert doctors, a variety of specialists, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, psychiatrists, and this is on a daily daily kind of rotation, So it was, and then even after leaving the hospital, then there was that sort of there to try and sort of assist you back through the process of getting back onto your feet. It's interesting, like I guess I've sort of thought about it, but not maybe quite as much. When you were talking about doing what you're doing currently, and I guess maybe tying back to the country roots and wanting like that sort of sense of community. Now I kind of look a bit at what I've been doing with my Monday series, which is Mondays at Moffs, and it's focused on our local community here at Moffat Beach, and trying to, I guess, do my own little part to shine a light on the different business owners and to I guess help them to get connected with each other. There's a really nice vibe of supporting each other, and I'm still really a pretty new person in town. I've only been here for a couple of years, but it's been fun for me just to get to know people too, and just kind of, I think it's probably that country thing of liking the idea of, I mean, my dad was involved with Apex, which I don't think is really much of a thing nowadays. And I don't know if it was in Queensland, maybe Rotary or Lions or something like that. But yeah, so I grew up with a lot of that. And I mean, and then Mum went to church, as did we. And so like I've sort of grown up with a lot of those kind of community type sort of things happening and activities. And yeah, I really like it. It's a nice way.
I don't think it's I think that when you think about what you end up doing, that you can generally see where it's come from somewhere, that you're either trying to move away from something that you've been through that you didn't like, or you're trying to reconnect with something that you did. And I think there's some really beautiful parts of close-knit communities, which they don't have to be rural communities or regional communities, but I think that was my experience. And I certainly think that maybe sometimes it's harder to find that initially when you come to a new community, but it is definitely there within the cities as well, and sometimes very strong connections. So it's been nice to tap into that.
So what year did you guys kick off, like officially? Like when did Good for the Hood start?
So we started in 2018 officially. We've been doing community work for about 18 months, 2 years before that. But that was the start of our business, our social enterprise then. Coming up to it'll be nearly 2.5 years, coming into our third year.
Nice. And so before COVID, were you doing much in the way of get-togethers or meetups or anything like that?
Yeah, it was really interesting, actually. I think in March this year, the business was looking like the year was, I keep saying, like, this is the year that's going to really set us up, because we're kind of in that, anyone who's for a startup, you kind of go through that initial phases and you get to a point where you like, all right, I know what I'm doing. I know, where we fit. We've got, customers coming in, we've got clients coming in, we've got lots of things happening, there's buzz all the time. And then like everything in March, I just watched almost everything we had for the year kind of fall away quite quickly. In saying that though, a lot of our clients and a lot of people we're working with were really committed to still having us involved in some way. And like everyone, they were like, whatever that is, we'll, just watch this space. So most of the people we started working with at the beginning of the year, end of last year, we have been able to work through with them. So we've had a huge number of online workshops that we've still been able to run. And if anything, COVID's actually been really good for crystallizing what it is we do really well. And those workshops are, our kind of bread and butter. And for me as a mum, it fits so nicely into being able to sit at the computer, do a couple of, workshops, step back out, be with my kids and manage my work around my life instead of the other way around. I think, like so many people, I've actually found that there's been a lot of really good things that's come out of this period. And I'm really excited because it's given me time to go, okay, what is it that we really want to do and what is it that we really want to be known for? And I think as a startup, that's really great to be able to have that space to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm a people person, so but then funnily, I was already working from a home office here for 12 months before, or maybe close to 18 months before COVID hit. So I'd kind of gone through like all the process of struggling with working from home. Like in the early phases, I would literally have this app, not an app, it was a website, and it streamed coffee shop noise. So like you could have a variety of background noise. Yeah, because I found that uncomfortable sitting here. It's really quite peaceful here, which is what you would think you would want. But I was just like sitting here, and I just felt like I was not at work or something. It was just a very strange feeling, and now I've kind of gotten used to it, and I do like some of the little things like you're mentioning. Like even this morning, I drive with a left foot modified accelerator pedal setup, right? Because of the back breaking of the back, and so because I still can't feel my right foot, and it's normally an easy, quick release kind of thing where you just shove it across and it unclips and it comes off. But just recently, it started jamming and not coming off, and it's ridiculous. And so then because it blocks the other pedal as well. So my wife, still drives like a normal person, and so she needed to use that, and we just couldn't get it off in time this morning. So I had to chuck my daughter in the car and our son who goes to daycare and my wife, and then we dropped the son to daycare. And then my daughter and I just went and dropped my wife off at because she's been doing sort of, I guess, stuff that fits in around school hours. So she's been doing some cleaning stuff. And so she had a cleaning job. And so then, I was sat on the laptop working in the car, and I did a conference call with some people overseas, and, like life was able to roll on, even despite how strange our circumstance was.
I think there's so many benefits to, I struggle to see the economic downturn and see that what I'm have been excited about is seeing the innovation that comes out of a really good economy. So I love seeing when there's investment, especially from corporates, and it's really hard at the moment knowing that there's so many businesses and people struggling. However, the flip side of that is that this is really the shake-up of the office as we knew it. And I think in terms of the impact on the environment, we need a strong economy to get ourselves out of some of the climate issues we've got. But at the same time, I think consumption is, we've all been sitting back and going, well, did I really need to live that way? Was that the way that I had to live? Or was that just, so look, there's good to be seen in anything. But I think, on a personal level, I've, apart from the initial shock and worry, obviously, and anxiety about, people's safety and health, I think, this period's been a really valuable period. It wasn't the year we expected to have, but so be it. That's just life.
Yeah, that's the reason. That's the reason that I was smiling at the start, because I think 2020, I, like many people, particularly with having the whole breaking the back thing 8 years ago, like the last decade hasn't been the best. And so I was kind of coming into this year and I was like, okay, I feel like at that stage my video production business was in its startup stages and it just kind of started doing some jobs that I was proud of. And I was like, okay, that's it. Yes, 2020, this is a new decade, time to shine. And I just think, so many people were the same. And then COVID, wow, nobody saw that one coming.
No. There's lessons in that.
Indeed. Tell me about some of the I mean, you would be in a great situation in terms of, I guess, meeting lots of people who are doing interesting things. Who are some of the organisations that sort of, I guess, jump to mind or have stuck out that you like?
Oh, look, that's a tricky one. Some of the great organisations I love. So we started very early with working with responsible cafes. So they're another sort of social enterprise that works with reducing. Actually, they're a not-for-profit, I think, that have been set up to reduce cafe and restaurant waste. So from single-use cups, which is where they've started, and they've now launched this beautiful platform which helps businesses report on all the great things they're doing. So a big fan of theirs.
Nice.
Done some work with the couple. I do a lot with local government organisations. So I've really enjoyed working with a group called the Parramatta River Catchment Group up here. So I've done some work with them. And also been involved in a lot of the community groups that work with them. And they're trying to take, an urban river from that was treated as basically a wastewater kind of system for a long time back to this beautiful swimmable river. So It's been wonderful to see how the community groups have been working alongside government organisations and, state government. We did a really beautiful visit down to Victoria. Nearly coming up to 2 years, where we went down and visited a whole group of organisations around Ballarat. And so we went to visit Food is Free Laneway down there. They are a group by Lou Risdale, who is basically providing food for the community, growing it. Come and help yourself, guys. Lots of gorgeous community gardens around.
So good
around there. And I guess some of my other favourites, Garage Sale Trail. The guys from Garage Sale Trail who've been around for nearly, I think, 8 or 10 years now, and they run an annual event with councils too. So we've done quite a bit of work with them and looking at what they do with communities as well. But the thing about it is. Brad, is that there's, within every community, there's got to be 8 to 10, by suburb. There's more than that, but there's these little groups everywhere from, our school PNC who start, trying to put solar on their roof, through to, a couple of teachers who get together and want to start composting, through to, the sports club who wants to start collecting their containers, the aluminium containers. Like, we find that no matter where you look, you find these people who are either just doing it and not telling anyone about it, or they're started, they're interested and they're kind of saying, how would we do that? So I guess the thing is that we're quite passionate about a lot of the communities we work with, and I think we're, getting close to, I can't even count. I should find out how many councils now, but every council we go to and work with, we uncover these groups, and it's exciting. So I think the more you see that, the more you realise the world is a really pretty special place, and we are incredibly connected, and we are incredibly lucky to have each other, and when we do good things, that that should be celebrated as well.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I think. And I think this is another positive at the moment with just the amount of information that is out there. I think for whatever reason, I kind of felt a bit like through the 90s, early 2000s, just my overall perspective about the human race and how many good people there were in the world was, for some reason, relatively dim. I'm quite an optimistic person by nature, but I didn't feel like the world was a terribly great place in total. And I don't know, maybe that's partially the news to blame, or, watching lots of documentaries about all sorts of terrible things going on in the world. But I think part of it was also maybe true. Particularly, I think there were some pretty bad corporations out there just doing some really dodgy things, but there are a lot more nice people in the world, really, probably, than there are bad people, and I think most people want to try and do something, and now more than ever. And what I get excited about is that the young people are really kind of fired up. So I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty cool to see
Mm.
as well.
Yeah. And I think my attitude is not to focus. Like, I'm not a fan of that toxic kind of positivity where we ignore the bad things. But and people say, oh, well, no, we've got huge, issues, and why would you focus on the positive things? It's just ignoring. And I'm like, well, I just know from my own personal opinion, if I don't focus on the things that are going well, or the things that, the things that we are tackling, or the positive good that's out there, I myself, in my mindset, go back to a place of fear, procrastination, hopelessness, grief, and just helplessness. And for me, that's not a place where I'm my best version of myself. And I think if I'm going to have an impact on other people, I have to be fueled by a belief that it makes a difference, because otherwise, why would I bother? And I think people need to know that too, that if they're going to do something, you need to believe in it. You need to feel like you are connected, that you're not just one person against, up against the world, and what's the point? So I think it really is important to focus on those things, not just because, it is actually true, but also because it drives your impact and your capacity for, for impacting and encouraging other people to do similar things. So that's why I do it. That's why we do look for the good in the hood. That's crucial.
Who was the brain or behind the name, or was this a joint thing that you came up with?
I would love to take that one, but no. We actually worked really closely with one of my favourite people, which is Kath Leach, who runs a wonderful design agency called Catfish Creative here in Sydney. But she works all over Australia and the world with for-purpose brands, particularly ones that are working with marine, waste, litter issues, and sort of circular economy problems. So she was the one who said, I've been sitting on this name for so long, and I think it's really great, and it's, it's all about the hoodie, and it, it would just be perfect for you guys. Would you be interested in, and we're like, yes, because we were looking for, that thing which kind of was a bit quirky, that was kind of grassroots, but also was kind of cute and fun. So that's where Good for the Hood came from. So yes, we can't claim that. That was all Catfish Creative. Definitely worth checking her out.
Catfish Creative. All right, we'll give them that one. That's good. And so tell me about the work that you've done with ABC and how that all came to be.
Yeah, so we had just finished sort of about an 18-month period of community campaigning. We'd been working with the local businesses, working with council, working with community groups to reduce single-use plastic in our area. And we'd had some wins and some successes. We've got, 100 cafes and businesses on board with reducing single-use plastic. We'd, been able to kind of work out what our community's sentiments were, do some research. We did a bit of, user experience design, talking to people and interviewing people, and came up with all this information and data. And then we went, there's actually something in this. These issues aren't unique to just our community, and they're not even unique to just the problem of litter and waste. These are like any environmental challenge, or to be honest, any behavioural change that you're trying to get within your community. So we were then at an event it was sort of around the time of the first War and Waste series at ABC, and we ran into the impact producer for the show, Andy Marks, who's a really fantastic kind of change maker himself. And we were talking about it, and we're like, we think we've this is all the things we've done in our community, and we think that every community should know that, if you want it to be successful, you've got to be local and positive and lighthearted, and you've got to build relationships, and you've got to give people, steps to take. And he's like, that's awesome. Come and talk to us. We want to know. This is the stuff we should be talking about. So as part of the second series of War on Waste, we were involved in developing exactly that, a bit of a toolkit. So it gave people, almost the hows. Like, if you are inspired by the show, how might you go about doing something in your community, not just in your house, because a lot of people get that and they're like, I know how to reduce, single-use plastic. I don't use a coffee cup, whatever. but how can I get my whole community, or maybe just, the mums in my mother's group, or, the teachers at my school, how might I get them interested? So we're like, here's the tools to do that. And then we were able to kind of amplify that, work with community. We had sort of 5,000 downloads of the toolkit there. So that was, 5,000 people with their communities looking at it and making those changes. And then again, there was a new series, the new Lou Media and Craig Castle series that was coming up again for Fight for Planet A, our climate challenge. And we were really fortunate to work with ABC again. Similar thing. If you're someone who's inspired by the show, what can you do about it? Outside of just people in your home, how might you take those people in your neighborhood, your street, your school, your business? How do you get them to join you and amplify your impact? So we've just finished sort of like coming up to 6 weeks, 2 months since that period of the show, which has been another really successful show in the fact that it's got people talking about emissions, from transport, food, and energy. And yeah, we've seen again exactly that, people popping up going, you know what, I want to make a difference, and I think my school can do something, or I think my neighbours could join me and start. So
nice.
so we've been lucky to work with both of those, and they're fantastic platforms for getting that message out there that we can make a difference.
Yeah, so good. So Fight for Planet A is a ABC series running now. Is it live at the moment? Or
it's still on iView. It's still worth checking out. There's 3 episodes, really, but 1 hour episodes. One's on energy, one's on transport, one's on food. And it looks at the climate issues and the climate challenges that Australia in particular faces, because per capita, we are some of the worst emitters in the world when it comes to, Australians say, oh, we're not big, big contributors to the issue. And we're like, well, maybe not the overall emissions, but per person, we emit a lot more than other countries, which is a real shame. So Craig's proposition is, if the government, if they do or don't do their part, what can we do, and what kind of emissions reductions could we achieve as everyday Aussies? And that was the proposition. So he goes out there and gives people their own little challenge. And from that, they've seen people all over Australia kind of tackling exactly that. Energy, so looking at renewables, transport, looking at how we can move to, electric vehicles, share economy when it comes to transport, how we can ditch the commute, which we're all doing anyway at the moment, and food, how can we reduce the emissions that go into generating the food that we eat. So very successful campaign, and there's still heaps of information. You can download the toolkit that we developed from our website, from goodforthehood.com.au, or from the ABC website, and there's a climate solutions pack there. You can also do a carbon counter, so you can work out what your emissions, if you commit to reducing some or changing some behaviours at home, exactly how many, what kind of CO2 emissions can you reduce, and what kind of impact. And then it's calculating that around Australia. So, that's when you start to see that this is lots of small steps that can add up to a lot.
Definitely. I'm just going to put in here the website for you guys. So is it just Good for the Hood? Good.
Yeah, goodforthehood.com.au.
Yeah, so people can go there. And what was what did you call the toolkit again?
It's just a Fight for Planet A community action toolkit.
Okay, they'll find it.
Yeah, but you'll find it on our website. Go there. And also, if someone has already got an existing group or something that they're really proud of and want to share with people, we've got a map that you can pop yourself on, so you can enter the details, and we'll put your details on there and link you through. And we often find out that people end up connecting with other like-minded people through there. And we've also got, for Changemakers, a Facebook group where people can connect, called Good Hood Makers as well. So invite anyone to jump on there and share their stories and promote their organisation or group or passion project.
Yes, so good. It's exciting, and this is the thing. And
Thank you, bud.
I just think too many people, I don't know, have had a bit of like bury your head in the sand type sort of way of looking at things, or just the problem's too big, But the problem that we've got, the problems, all of them on the face of the planet, no matter how big they are, they got there incrementally by individuals, all multiple, and just thousands or millions of individuals doing the wrong thing. And that's how it's all come to be. So, by the same token, in some ways you could probably almost go, if people really put the effort in, you could probably go back in the other direction
100%.
faster, because you're more focused on what needs to change. But equally, I think it's important that people don't feel as though they have to solve every problem on the face of the planet. If they just making a small step of going, okay, I'm just not going to throw my rubbish out the window, or, I'm not going to throw my rubbish in the nature reserve, or I'm not going to leave the skirt on the beach.
My attitude is doing good is good, but not doing bad is probably better. So even if good is not being someone who's deliberately, destructive of the environment, then that in itself is something that's really beneficial. Thank you, Brad. It's been great to chat to you today, and I'm excited to hear about all the other change makers that are out there too. It's
absolutely, well, I'm sure there'll be good opportunities to cross over. You can sort of see, become aware of people if you come on here, and I'd love to perhaps get an intro to some of those people that you mentioned earlier, and have an opportunity to bring them on the show. And then once Flicks for Good's up and running, and look, for people who don't know the Flicks for Good's story, essentially I'm starting a social enterprise video streaming service, and the goal initially was quite small, and then as I started thinking more and more about it, I was just like, you know what, if I got the right people, which I believe I can because of my years of working in recruitment and networking, if I had the right people and we were putting out great quality content, TV, movies, the whole shebang, and we also give half of our profits to different causes that people care about, nominated by the subscribers of the service, why couldn't we compete head to head with the big guys? So that's kind of where it's at now, is I'm just really gearing up and getting prepared to start sharing more and more of the story, more of my story. I'll probably do a little bit of a shake up even with some of I think I'm maybe putting out too many shows at the moment, so I might have to kill a couple, which is a little bit sad, but I need to get the main story happening as well, as sharing everybody else's story.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Brian. I look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, don't be a stranger, and enjoy your time back in the country.
I will. Thank you. Great. Thanks, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Good for you. Thanks. So good. Yep, just another, and that's probably the best part of this whole series. Really, is it's really just exciting to meet people who have a good heart and want to do something to help the world. And it sounds like those guys have got a bucket load of great resources. I'll pop the website back up again so that if you want to get there, you can get to goodforthehood.com.au. And if you're thinking about starting a social enterprise or want some help with your not-for-profit, they sound like a great place to go. And if you have a great story to share, by the way, please don't be a stranger. Just reach out. You can find me on Instagram, Brad4Good, so Brad for Good. And if you want to find out more about Flicks for Good, my venture, then that's simply flicksgood.com.au. Just up there. Yeah, it's just a landing page at the moment. There's a little video I made for Kevin Hart's Mars Shot Challenge, which I didn't win, which is fine, because in a lot of ways I really still hope to do this in a grassroots way where everybody builds it together and we keep the overheads low. But if you want to keep up to date with that, then jump on there and you can pop an email address in, and that would be awesome too. All right, hooroo everybody, and don't forget to share the show with your mates.